Shabbat Shalom. Don't worry, you have not become unstuck in time. It is still 2022. Both Rabbi Kaznowski and Rabbi Weiner are involved with events in their own families this evening, and they asked me to step up and fill in for them, which I am, of course, happy to do. If at some point I appear befuddled, someone will point me in the right direction, and we'll continue on. We've come into the sanctuary to welcome Shabbat, our time of rest, our time of joy, and our time of peace. As we prepare to welcome Shabbat, let's take a moment to think about the events of the week. Let's think about what we did on Sunday and on Monday and on through the week. We come now to Shabbat, our time of peace, our time of joy. This is the third Shabbat in the Hebrew month of Iyar. This evening we are honoring Jesse Natoris, who tomorrow morning will be called to the Torah as a bat mitzvah. We will welcome Shabbat with singing Mikolot Maim Rabim. We dedicate this time as a sacred time of Shabbat through the blessing of the candles, and will be led this evening by Leah Dicker-Natoris and Michelle Slogoff. Shabbat Shalom. We continue now in our prayer books on page 20 with Lecha Dodi. We continue now on page 26 with the Chatzi Kaddish. We continue now with the Baruch Hu. Will the congregation please rise? Please be seated. We continue now on page 30 with Ma'ariv Aravim, and we'll be led by Jesse.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim behochma potea she'arim uvitvuna mishane itim umahalif et hazmanim umsader et hakohavim b'mishmerotechem barakia kirtzono Berei yom v'layla Galil or mipnei Hoshe, v'Hoshe mipnei or umevir yom umevi laila, umavdil bein yom uvein laila, Adonai Sevaot Shmo. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamidi Amloch Aleinu Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'ma'ariv Aravim. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching his Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Amo Yisrael.
We continue now with Shema on page 34. Will the congregation please rise? Please be seated. We continue with the Hafta on page 36. We continue on page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that this winding way to the promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. We continue on page 43 in the middle of the page. Let's read together. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety. In your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeis sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue now with Vishamru. We continue now with the Tefillah, which begins on page 46. Will the congregation please rise?
Adonai,
Please be seated. We'll continue on the top of page 55, and we will read responsively. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who suffer find solace. May all who despair find purpose. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. We continue on page 59. At the top of the page, we can read together. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the wretches of the earth which day, for all these, Baruch atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha Alecha Na'eh Lehodot. We continue with Shalom Rav. We continue now with Seder Kriyat Torah, the service for the reading of the Torah, which begins in our prayer books on page 244. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it. Gadlul Adonai iti unromama shamo yachtav. Exalt Adonai with me, and let us extol God's name together. Please be seated. The Torah portion for this Shabbat is Behukotai. It's the final portion in Sefer Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. The book of Leviticus has contained lots of commandments. It's the Torah. It has commandments. Commandments are us. Behave yourself. Behave yourself. The first part of Leviticus has commandments concerning the sacrifices. Then we read the holiness code. And now we come to the end of the book of Leviticus. And the big rousing conclusion, Moses reminds the people that there are blessings coming to them when they follow the commandments. And if they don't follow the commandments, not so good. I'm not going to tell you what happens if you don't follow the commandments. That you have to find out on your own. But if you do follow the commandments, blessings will come to you. Doing a mitzvah brings a mitzvah. Ta'amod Shashona Aliyah Bat Leah Yocheved V'Adam Ya'amod Adam Yoshua Pinchas ben Ruvain V'Rivka. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. If you like to follow the reading, it's in the Chumashim on page 747. We're reading at the beginning of the Parashah, Sefer Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, chapter 26, verse 3. So as you're finding a place, I'll give you a moment. The first word is im. So all of you who are future Chalatzim campers or former staff members know, we'll give a test right here, know that the word im means if. So it starts out if you go this way or if you go that way. Im behukotai telechu vet mitzvotai tishmeru vasitam otam natati gishmechem bitam natata haaretz yivula ve'etz hasadeh yitain piryo v'hisig lachem daish et batzir uvatzir yisig et hazera v'achaltam lachmehem l'sova v'yashaftam lavetach be'artzachem. Our thoughts turn now to those of our community and families who are ill and in need of healing. This evening we think of Krista Niestro, Richard Vane, Arthur Lang, Heather Borzak, Dick McLean, Quince Newman, Brooke Ann Gottesman, Bridget Stern, Jim Berry, Jay Field, Mick's family, Len Schultzman, Charlotte Wolfenstein, Joy Rosenthal, Sherry Katz, Mary Jo Wolski, Alan Wolski, Gary Tatiner, Cheryl Hildebrand, Cheryl Ball, John Eulenberg, Rhonda Rhodes, David Menikoff, Rusty Taylor, Rabbi Bruce Goldwasser, Rabbi Fred Wenger, Jean Maynard, Jacqueline Sullivan, Julie Melvin, Carol Nymark, Catherine Smith, Janice Quinones, Alan Frankfurter, Helen Dumas, Cindy Swanson, and all other who suffer whom we know not by name. Misha Berach Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Valeah, Hu Yevarecha, Yorpeh, Kol Chole Yisrael. V'sholach lahem b'mehara refuah shlema, refuat nefesh, refuat aguf, v'nomar, Amen. May God who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Bless and heal all who are stricken. May the Holy One of Praise mercifully restore them to health and to vigor. May God grant them health of body, health of spirit, and of mind. And let us say, Amen. Ta'amod Hagba'ah, Yona Laila, Bat Michal Yisraela, Ta'amod Golelet, Bracha Bat Chaim U'Michael. Will the congregation please rise? Push down. Lift up. Please be seated. We continue now in our prayer books on page 258 with a prayer for our country, and we'll be led by Mike Rashid.
For our country. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech. If you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness.
We continue on page 259 with a prayer for Israel, and will be led by Barry Fiddle.
O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath your wings of your love. Spread over it your canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fulfillment and joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
We continue now on page 256 as we rise to return the Torah to the Ark. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kiniskav, Shemo Levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted. God's majesty is above the earth and heaven. God is the strength of our people, making God's faithful one Israel a people close to the eternal. Hallelujah. In this week's Torah portion, we read about the procedure for redeeming land. During the Jubilee year, we're told how we go back and reacquire land that we had lost since the last Jubilee year. Leviticus 27 describes how we take ownership of land. Now, some of you may have had the joy of acquiring land here in the 21st century. The Mishnah in Brachot describes how people demonstrate ownership of several categories of objects. Large animals are acquired by being handed over. Small animals by lifting. Our house, we have a large animal. Some of you have seen my large white dog. We do not acquire her by lifting. Maybe when she was a puppy, we actually did. Now, the sages say small animals can also be acquired by being led. Now, the ownership of property, according to the Mishnah, can be secured through money, a document, or a proprietary act. Today in America, people acquire the ownership of land through money and signing a few documents. Okay, signing a lot of documents. Just right here, one more, well, a few more. But there was a time in the history of our country when a proprietary act played a key role in land acquisition. The United States Congress passed the Homestead Act in 1862 to accelerate the settlement of the Western territories by granting adult heads of families 160 acres of surveyed public lands for a minimal filing fee and 5 years of continuous residence. Now, how did I learn about homesteading? From Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie books, the same way many of you learned about homesteading. As many of you know, I love history, but my first introduction to history of the Midwest came from the Little House books. As you might recall, the Little House books told the story of Laura's family pioneering years in the Midwest in the late 19th century. In By the Shores of Silver Lake, Laura describes the process of establishing the family's homestead in South Dakota. Early in the book, Pa explains his plan to his wife. "Listen to reason, Caroline," Pa pleaded. "We can get 160 acres out west just by living on it." After the family moves to South Dakota, it takes Pa some months to find the right land. When he does, he pays $14 to file a claim. I bet Uncle Sam $14 against 160 acres of land so we can make out to live on the claim for 5 years. Who is going to help me win that bet? "Oh, yes, Pa," Carrie said eagerly. And Mary said, "Yes, Pa, gladly." And Laura promised soberly, "Yes, Pa." Near the conclusion of By the Shores of Silver Lake, Charles reflects on his new life in what they call their claim shanty. "Now we are all snug," Pa said. "Bring me my fiddle, Laura, and we'll have some music." I was 6 years old when the Bob family came to Minnesota, 100 years after the Ingalls arrived in the upper Midwest. I enjoyed the Little House books as a child. My sister, brother, and I identified with Laura's family's adventures. A generation later, Tammy and I read the books to our children. Our children are now sharing these stories with their own children. Even our Israeli granddaughters enjoy them. Tammy and I have visited many of the Little House sites on our driving trips. On a driving trip to Los Angeles, we made what we thought would be a brief stop at the Laura Ingalls Wilder Home and Museum in Mansfield, Ohio. We were stopping there for an hour. We spent half a day looking at the artifacts from the Ingalls family's pioneer life. We saw many sacred objects of the Ingalls family, including Pa's actual fiddle. Looking at the fiddle hanging on the wall, I could imagine Pa playing it for his family in their South Dakota claim shanty. As Jews, we are an ever-returning people. Abraham and Sarah came to settle in the land of Canaan. After the exodus from Egypt, we returned to the land. After the Babylonian exile, the Persian king Cyrus the Great decreed that we could return to the land. And in the modern age, the Zionist pioneers began to return in the late 19th century. We're an ever-returning people. Now, tonight I want to ask, how did Abraham and Sarah acquire ownership of the land? Now, you may say, "Oh, Rabbi, it's simple. God gave it to them." It says right there in Genesis 12, God told them to go to the land, to leave all they knew in Haran and go to the new land. And perhaps all Abraham and Sarah had to say to God was, "Thank you." I can assure you, no paperwork was required. Nobody said to Abraham, "Sign here, sign here." It didn't happen. But the rabbis think that Abraham and Sarah did more than simply arrive at the land. They think they had to do more to claim the land, more to acquire the land. The rabbis explain that Abraham and Sarah and each generation of the matriarchs and patriarchs had to perform a proprietary act to demonstrate they owned the land. In Sifrei, the Midrash on Deuteronomy, we read a parable. A king gave his servant a certain field as a gift, giving it to him as it was. The servant went to work improving it, saying, "What I have is only that which was given to me as it was." And then he planted a vineyard in it. So when the Holy One, blessed be He, gave Abraham the land, He gave it to him only as it is, and said, "Arise, walk through the land, the length of it and the breadth of it, for unto thee I will give it." And Abraham went to work to improve it. As it says in the Torah, Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba. Isaac likewise went to improve it. As it says, Isaac sowed in the land and found in the same year 100-fold. And in the third generation, Jacob too went to improve it, and he bought a parcel of ground. Each of the first 3 generations of our people improves the land to demonstrate that they really owned it. When the Zionist pioneers, the modern pioneers of the Zionist movement, began to return the land to the late 19th century, they also improved the land to demonstrate ownership of it. What did these modern Zionist chalutzim do? They planted trees. As part of the Jewish people's ongoing acquisition and development of the land. For them, planting trees was a proprietary act. Those of us who had the honor and joy of attending religious school in mid-century America participated in this act of planting trees. Those of you who are of my generation will remember dimes. We used to have actual money. There was no credit cards were used in the 50s to buy trees. There was a folder, a cardboard folder, and the cardboard folder had room for 20 dimes. And when you put 20 dimes in the cardboard folder, you had enough money to plant a tree in Israel, and you handed in your cardboard folder with 20 dimes, and you can imagine immediately someone went with a shovel and planted a tree in the land of Israel because you brought 20 dimes. That's what we thought, in Minnesota, that was how we thought it worked. Bringing the dimes, really, I think that bringing those dimes was our proprietary act. That by bringing those dimes, we were redeeming the land of Israel. We were growing the land of Israel. We were restoring the Jewish homeland. As an adult, I've tried to continue to do my part in the ongoing building of the Jewish state. Part of it was leading groups from the congregation, many of you went with me, of children and of adults to Israel. In 1991, I was with a group of teenagers, and we visited Yad Lakashish, Lifeline for the Old in Jerusalem. It was my first visit to this project, this sheltered workshop for the elderly. In welcoming us, the director, Nava Ainmore, said to me, "Oh, I see you're from Chicago. Do you know Rabbi Mark Shapiro? He's a dedicated supporter of ours." Now, Nava asked a pretty straightforward question in the game of Jewish geography, but it touched me deeply. Where in Israel would someone say to a visitor, "I see you're from Chicago. Do you know Rabbi Stephen Bob?" I understood that I had allowed myself to be too passive a supporter of Israel. I wanted to be a more active, self-directed participant in the life of Israel. I needed to perform ongoing proprietary acts to express my connection to Israel. Many of you have been involved with lots of those acts, helping me over many, many years. And I believe if you walked into Lifeline in Jerusalem today and said you're from Chicago, they would indeed ask you, "Oh, do you know Rabbi Stephen Bob?" I continue to work to express my connection to Israel and to help others do so as well. In a few weeks, I will be returning to Olin Sang Ruby Union Institute in beautiful Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, for another summer of teaching Jewish teenagers to speak Hebrew. So one of the things I'm trying to still do. At the conclusion of the Passover Seder, we say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. When we say these words, we're not speaking of Jerusalem as it is. We imagine returning to the rebuilt Jerusalem. The first wave of our people returning from the exile in Babylonia did their part to rebuild Jerusalem. The Chalosim of the Zionist movement did their part to rebuild Jerusalem. There remains work for us to do in our own time to rebuild Jerusalem, so that we'll indeed become a city of golden values. Shabbat Shalom. We continue now on page 282. We invite to the bima at this time Rob Dicker and Roberta Goodman. Will the congregation please rise?
Hey
Our thoughts turn out to those who have departed this earth. We recall those who death has recently taken from us, and those who died in these days in years gone by. This Shabbat, we observe the yahrzeit of Edward Bell, father of Rich Bell, Barbara Morrison Hansfield, mother of David Hansfield, Emma Shapiro, mother of Sherry Balin, Sidney Wright, father of Mark Wright, Floyd Bonk, father of Virginia Weisskopf, Erwin Davis, uncle of Deborah Bacall, Honora Benario, mother of Howard Benario, Quentin Jenkins, stepfather of John Butterfield, Marvin Krasnow, brother of Eugene Krasnow, Ethel Zemp, aunt of Judith Frankel, great aunt of Daniel Frankel, Cy Golden, brother of Fran Dvorkin, Catherine Markwell, mother of Kenneth Markwell, Della Danziger, mother of James and Stephen Danziger, Opal Martin Gilbert, mother of Jennifer Gilbert Kaczynski, Geraldine Grossman, mother of Michelle Grossman, Hannah Triffler, mother of Mark Triffler, Myron J. Beiersdorf Jr., father of Bruce Beiersdorf, Sarah Ravel, mother of Merle Ehrlich, Herbert Saywitz. And we mourn the recent passing of Kurt Johnson, father of Sherry Katz, Carolyn Colhane, friend of the Margolis family, Sue Chait, mother of Joanne Gallagher, Elaine Bell, grandmother of Dan Tater, Claire Weiner, grandmother of Rabbi Jesse Weiner. The Kaddish is found in our prayer books on page 294. Will the congregation please rise? Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yalmad divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chai echon v'yom echon chayei l'chol beit Yisrael ba'gala uvizman kari v'imru amen Yehei shmei Rab v'varach li'olam omei omaya Yitbarach v'yishtabah yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yit adar, v'yit aleh, v'yit Allah, shmei d'krisha brichu. Leila mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom araba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'alkoy v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Please be seated.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for celebrating Shabbat with us tonight. I'm Jacob Cinnamon Murphy, and I'm honored to share our announcements with you this evening. Thank you to our usher, Adam Rubicek, and our greeter, Rachel Wood. Thank you, Rabbi Bob, for joining us this evening. And thank you to Jason Hill and the choir for providing the lovely music tonight. Tomorrow will be our last Torah study led by Rabbi Koznowski before our summer schedule, which will be the same time, but led by our amazing volunteers. Welcome to the guests of the Notaris family, and Mazel Tov on Jesse's Bat Mitzvah. You can join us here or on YouTube tomorrow to witness Jesse being called to the Torah as a Bat Mitzvah. Join us for the Spring Assembly with DuPage United this Sunday with several members of our leadership. The larger the attendance, the more power we will have to influence our elected officials on the importance of these issues. Sign up for our annual meeting this Tuesday at 7 p.m. here in the sanctuary. Save the date for June 4th at 5 p.m. for our congregational Shavuot block party. For all the details on each event, check out our weekly happenings email. Please join us after services for a wonderful oneg in the social hall, sponsored by the Notaris family. Shabbat Shalom.
We'll conclude this evening with Al Shlosha Devarim, which is, no? It says here Al Shlosha Devarim. Which is also a nice song. For another occasion. All right, the choir insists we're going to finish with a Dona Lum. Let's all rise. I'm happy to invite Ken Siegel and Harvey Siegel to come forward to lead us in Kiddush. Yes, the Siegel brothers, yes.
The Siegel brothers, yes.
They're twins.
And we're asking everyone to join us too. You start. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, v'yahava uvratzah hinkilanu, zikaron l'maaseh bereshit, gihu yom tehiyah l'mekrei kodesh, zecher l'tzmiyat Mitzrayim, givanu v'harta, v'yotanu kidashta, mikol halim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'yahava uvratzon in hatanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Let's join together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam,
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
you can just lose your